Right now is the former press advisor to then House Speaker John Boehner, Maura Gillespie, as well as Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha. Guys, let's get into this, starting with the D.C. takeover. The President Trump now says, Maura, that he wants the takeover to last longer than 30 days, than that which is allowed in the order, and he's likely to ask Congress for an extension to continue his control over D.C.'s police, which the move is unlikely to pass, as it would require, one would assume, Democratic support, which you also know that he knows. Which means what about how all of this is playing out and what the president is looking for?
It makes me think about when, a couple of years back, there were this faction of the Republican Party who would refer to themselves as the true conservatives. What Donald Trump is doing is not a conservative policy or principle. As a true conservative, you're going to call it that, you believe in a smaller, more accountable government. How does the federal takeover of a city constitute a smaller, accountable government? It just doesn't. And listen, the argument to say that, crime's not that bad or, the rates aren't that bad, that's not the argument to make. I believe as a Republican that the argument I'm having, and I'm wondering where those true conservatives are now on this issue, is the federal takeover, the big overreach that's happening. And that should concern all Americans, not the left, not just only those who are like me and who remember what we stand for as Republicans, but this overreach. And in that same conversation, then what is being done to stop the United States, the crime issues at the United States, the gun violence in the United States? What are we doing to curb those issues and getting at the core of our problems here, not necessarily just having a federal overreach that doesn't seek to solve those problems?
Which also makes me think that maybe the best thing going for especially House Republicans right now is that they are not in Washington and not needing to face reporters on a daily basis to answer some of these questions. Chuck, the president is definitely threatening not just to extend it longer in D.C., but to extend this beyond D.C. I had the mayor of Kansas City, Missouri on yesterday, and the way that Mayor Quinton Lucas sees it is this puts Democratic mayors in now a no-win situation. Here's why. Let me play this.
This is one of the best fights to pick, because what I have to sit in front of you and say is, yes, there are homicides in my city. Yes, there is crime, but we don't think the same prescription of help is necessary. It's a tough position, but I think, frankly, this is the situation we're in, and he's not really interested in trying to save lives for us, but just exploiting the political issue.
Chuck, is this a political trap the Democrats are falling for?
It could be if they fall for it. This is about one thing, and let's be very clear. This is about the midterm elections, and that's all what this is about. It's about messaging. I do campaign strategy every day, and this is good strategy for Donald Trump. It may not be good for America. It's not good for me here in D.C. I'm sitting in D.C. here. I've been here for 20 years. The streets are safer than they've been in the last few years. Will they ever be safe enough? No. But this is not about the safety in the streets. It's about a messaging war. Donald Trump wants to be able to say that he's cleaned up the cities, that he's tough, and that he's law and order, and they can run those TV commercials. Think about this. No marginal congressional seat in America in the midterms resides in the downtown of any city in America. Almost zero. So it's not about that. It's about the suburban voters who think that crime is out of hand. And that's where all the marginal seats are. And he can run ads saying, I cleaned up those dirty quote unquote cities. A friend of mine from East Texas called me 3 days ago after the president made his announcement and said, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm 6'1", 210 pounds of mean. Ain't nobody gonna mess with me. I'm fine. He was worried about me in Washington, D.C., showing that that does work.
Chuck, man, I want you to write one-liners for like my life, just about just on a going forward basis. Maura, let me ask you about something that came up yesterday, and I spoke with Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin about this, because House Democrats are now demanding answers from the Justice Department and the Bureau of Prisons over the recent prison transfer of Ghislaine Maxwell to a minimum security prison. Of course, the very close associate, former girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein. And Democrats are even suggesting that that the Justice Department could be attempting to tamper with a crucial witness. Raskin's kind of leading this effort to get information about how this transfer went down. Here's what he told me last night.
Even for people who are allowed to be transferred, normally that's a process that takes months. So she bypassed that entire process and has just moved over to that facility. Obviously, the administration is sending the message to her that she will be rewarded for the proper cooperation. Blanche liked what he heard her saying.
What happens with this, Maura?
I think that there is still that stronghold in the MAGA base that is, there are cracks there in their support with Donald Trump because they are concerned about some of these things when it comes to the Epstein files, when it comes to how they were, in many of their views, lied to, and they're confused about it. I don't know that putting Jamie Raskin out there is necessarily the best path forward to get them to continue to ask questions. They may be, and again, I do think that when Republicans are talking about this issue, it's a problem for Donald Trump. When Democrats are talking about it, it's a win for Donald Trump. And so because MAGA voters will likely just see that and see Jamie Raskin up there, who was on the January 6th committee, and be turned away from it and think that it's a political witch hunt. And they'll start to go back into their corners and not see that that Trump is distracting them, right? Like he's got these other things that are going on to try and distract from from the issue that they care about, which is the transparency that he promised. So I think that there is hopefully light at the end of the tunnel. I think American people want to know the answers as to especially that transfer for someone who is a child sex trafficker going from to a cushy prison. So we do want answers, and we'll see what transpires there.
Yeah. Chuck, Maura, great to see you guys. Thanks.